Hello and welcome. This is a conversation between three financial planners out there doing niche work in the world. And we all have a similar mindset around minimalism. So we thought we would gather together and give you the inside scoop on a conversation between three nerdy money gals and our thoughts about minimalism and the economy. So, thank you, Holly and Julie, for joining me today to talk about this topic that we've talked about so many times before.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having us.
Laura. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So I thought we would just kick it off with starting with introductions, just so that anybody who ever encounters this video will know who we are, who we work with, where we are, and kind of our particular niche focus in the financial planning space. So you want to start, Holly?
Sure. So I'm Holly Davis. I'm the founder and financial planner of Alta Via Financial Planning based in Seattle, Washington, but serving clients virtually throughout the United States. So the clients that I work with are mid-career professionals who thrive on adventuring in the outdoors. Also, I work with a lot of clients who have equity compensation. So I serve a lot of clients who work for Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, and help them with prioritizing their multiple competing financial goals, such as saving for retirement, saving for college for their children, um, potentially a second home purchase in some cases, remodeling. So that's me.
So, Holly, do you want to tag on to that a little bit about kind of your thoughts around a minimalist approach and what that means to you?
Yeah, so I would say that, my start to minimalist living started when my husband and I first purchased our first home about 18 years ago. We purchased a smaller home of about 1,000 square feet because that was what we could afford at the time. And I feel like from there, our approach to minimalist living has just kind of expanded, and we've started to, see the benefits from living in a smaller home. You can only accumulate so many things. We also have, for the most part, lived on one car. We spend a lot of time outside, commuting by bicycle, so only have the need for one car. But what we've found over time is that by having a smaller mortgage and just having a one car, just overall fewer things. One, it's helped to keep our stress levels down. We find that owning fewer possessions keeps stress down, and we're able to save more. So we feel like we've, created a good situation. So it started from a necessity, but it's just kind of grown and evolved from there.
It's so good to talk this through because everybody's idea of minimalism and, focusing on what's most important to them looks different. And so it's good to hear, how you think about it in terms of, commuting and, your home and just sort of not accumulating a lot of things. So, Julie, you want to segue there and talk about who you are and who you're serving, where you are, and what your minimalist approach looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Julie Jenkins. I am the owner and financial planner of Redesign Wealth Planning. It is a financial planning firm that focuses on just really empowering women to take control of their financial journeys. I have a deep passion for women, and that stems from my 16 years in women's medicine. Saw that those women needed a lot of healthcare guidance, but they also, and even more so, needed financial guidance. And so really that those women are kind of the reason that I am doing what I do today. I just have a passion that to see women succeed in all areas of their life, especially their financial life and their financial freedom. And so I really kind of focus on mid-career women, not necessarily breadwinners, large breadwinners, but more women that kind of make the decisions in the household. And so, yeah, I am based in South Alabama and do a lot of work locally, but also serve clients across the United States as well. And Holly and I kind of have similar paths to our minimalist lifestyle, but uh, we kind of divert and then we kind of come back. So we too started our minimalist lifestyle when my husband and I first got married. Our first home was a little 800 square foot, 2 bedroom, 2 bath house. And we spent quite a number of years and had 2 children in that house. And some of the best memories are in that house. But as most Americans do, we actually kind of let lifestyle creep in, and we stepped up in square footage along really come 2008 when we had the housing market crash. It really forced us to reevaluate the choices that we had made. So we then began on that path of slowly getting back into, a minimalist lifestyle and smaller square footage. And so we just find that, we value the minimalism for a number of different reasons. But, for us, it comes down just to that financial freedom and travel and exploration and time spent outdoors, and not so much the upkeep of, things in a larger home and that sort of thing. So, that's kind of our journey to minimalism. And, we have a very full and satisfied life living in our small space than what we did in our, the traditional American dream house.
Yeah, I love that. I wonder how many other financial planners that we haven't yet connected with are out there, prioritizing small space and thinking about, investing in other ways or focusing on other things. I'm sure we're not alone, but definitely it's good for everyone to hear that you can choose something different than the American dream path, because there certainly are a lot of financial professionals out there helping people on the traditional path, and we're sort of on a different path. So thanks for sharing those details, Julie. So, of course, I'm sitting in my tiny house. So I'm Laura Lynch, and I do pivot planning for folks trying to get into tiny living and also folks that are in tiny spaces, creating an impact financial plan for them. And I came to the minimalist approach after chasing down the American dream for all the expected decades and checking all the boxes that I thought I was supposed to check. And then I realized in the midst of the pandemic that I felt very fragile in a world where I had such a big cost of living, and I had to, continue on a path that didn't feel very authentic to me in order to maintain that cost of living. And so that was the beginning of a multi-year downsize plan, uh, cross-country relocation, change of business, and just a lot of minutia in order to get to a smaller world in which we are mortgage free and debt free and just really working on passion based work. I'm also the creator and host of Less House, More Moolah podcast. So very much focused in this world. So I think that we should talk about how that we think for others that this is a potential viable path for them, because certainly the world outside tells us the viable path is the 4-year college education and the career ladder, the 2.5 kids, doing all of the things, buying up as much house as you can afford, upgrading your house, new cars, lots of debt, right? And so let's talk about how we think that for folks seeking financial freedom, that minimalism and a different approach may be a good option. Holly, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I feel like it's something that people doesn't cross their mind because our culture supports like all those things that you mentioned, like the larger house, 2.5 kids, saving for college. And life is just, it seems like it's, for so many people, it's the rat race, but it doesn't have to necessarily be that way. But you see what everyone else is doing. and, paying for the higher mortgage and so forth. But um, by, if one thing that I do with clients is really help them, tap into their values, to see, like, is this really what's, making you happy? Is it what's going to speak to your 90-year-old self, in each purchase that you make? Is this really what's going to bring fulfillment and happiness to your life? And by trying to reduce how much you spend, there's more opportunity for saving, which then creates more flexibility down the line. So, for those that want to reach for, financial independence sooner, or such as Coast Fi, the Coast Financial Independence Sooner, that will create a lot more flexibility, but that requires more spending, or less spending earlier on and more saving. So that's what I have been trying to help clients is, dig into what is most valuable to you. Is it really purchasing this new car? Is that going to bring more happiness and fulfillment to your life? That brand new car, or how about, a used car that's half the cost? Do you really need the big house? Can you purchase something smaller and still have the same level of fulfillment and happiness in your life? Trying to ignore what everyone else around you is doing and what everyone's doing on Instagram or your other social medias. Um, so that's the approach that I take.
Yeah, and it sounds like that for you, the outcome there is allowing people to not have to stay in that rat race for as long and be able to make a transition to something maybe less lucrative from an income perspective and more values based. That's the whole notion behind CoastFi, right, Holly?
It is. And so I really love working with younger clients. I don't as much anymore, but it's really fun to see, clients in their 20s interested in financial planning, because they really have an opportunity by taking advantage of the power of compounding by saving earlier, in their younger years, even if it's not a lot. And that really will help to increase their flexibility later in life. There's so many different trains of thought. I recently read Die with Zero, which there's many aspects of that book that I did like, but others that I didn't. And one piece that I disagreed with, or it was when they talked about maximizing your younger years and not saving as much. But I feel like I'm quite thankful that I did start saving in my 20s, because now it's created a lot of flexibility. And it doesn't mean you have to save half of your income, but maybe, saving even 10 to 15% of your income when you're young really helps to create flexibility later on. Saving before you have children, before you're in that cash flow crunch, really helps to reduce stress later on when you have all of these competing financial goals.
Yeah. So, Julie, what do you think about this in terms of how your approach or a minimalist approach can help people that are seeking financial freedom?
Yeah, so I actually think that the concept is simple, but I don't think that it is easy to put into practice for everyone. I think if a lot of people could overcome the behavioral part of minimalism, for the seeking of financial freedom, and it could actually create financial freedom for them. For instance, right now I'm working with an older couple that is on the path of seeking financial freedom, and they surely could obtain it at the moment, and achieve it. But for them, it's the behavioral part of it, and they just can't let go of the stuff that's filling their 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And, all the data that we can show them is not going to convince them to make, another choice. It truly is behavioral. And I think that it's important for, us as financial planners working with clients, that number one, we acknowledge, like Holly said, it's such, a consumer mentality, and that we really do have to acknowledge that this consumption that people have is really filling some sort of an emotional gap, and whether that be stress or boredom or, validation, whatever it might be, you do have to acknowledge that first. And then, just the values exercise, kind of like what Holly was talking about. And that is why we kind of put that into our practice. And we do that with our clients, because if you're not clear about where you're going and why you're going there, it's hard to make those shifts and those mindset changes. It's keeping up with the social norms is tied to comparison, and social media drives that. And that is, honestly, for me, that's kind of why I eliminated social media out of my life for so many years, is because I think you have to be self-aware and you have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, this comparison is making me or encouraging me to, have habits that maybe I wouldn't or ordinarily have, or desires, that I wouldn't ordinarily have. And then I really do find that working with clients, you do have to, and trying to shift their mindset into more of a intentional spending or minimalist lifestyle. As we all three know, minimalist lifestyle really is a journey, and it certainly is not something that you obtain overnight. But I think when you're working with clients and you're trying to get them to spend more intentionally, I think you have to celebrate the small wins and the things that they are not necessarily sacrificing, but the things that they are choosing to spend more intentionally on. And then, I think accountability partner, because it's just not something that some people are going to achieve on their own. And I think that is why we are so important in our clients' lives, is because, we show them sometimes a different way of looking at things and a different way of looking at spending and saving. And we're their accountability partner. And, to be able to, at the end of it, say, I achieved all of this because of your help, and because, you were right there with me, holding my hand along the way. Yeah, I actually totally, for me, a minimalist lifestyle has opened up so many doors professionally and personally. So I think that that's just kind of what we have to help our clients look at it in a different light and aspect.
I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who's attributed or gets credit for the quote, comparison is the thief of joy. And we talk about that often in my household, that comparison that we see on all the screens, right? It robs us of the joy of what we have. So I think you're right that we have to help people have a different mindset around what they're seeing around them is trying to accomplish, in terms of the screens are there to catch your eyeballs and in order to help corporations make money. They're not, designed to catch your eyeballs in order to inspire you to what is best for you. So it's kind of about educating and doing a long-term process of reminding us all of staying rooted in ourselves and what we actually find joy in, and not letting someone else tell us what will bring us happiness.
Yeah, I agree
So
100%.
I think one of the things that absolutely drives me crazy is that every time I listen to the market news, they're talking about, GDP, which is our, primary measure of economic growth in this country, being very much about consumption. It's very much about consumption. And so I thought it was an interesting addition to that conversation to think about consumption beyond just, the groceries and the tchotchkes and the trips to TJ Maxx. But in fact, consumption can also be of services and of art and of music and of all the other things that we think about in terms of experiences. For you, Holly, right? Consumption is a bike tour. We all have different ways of consuming. And so maybe my frustration with the GDP measure forgets that a lot of consumption can also be of services, of experiences, of enriching parts of life. So What do you think about when you constantly hear over and over again that, everything is about the consumer and 70% of the economy is about the consumer spending? Does that frustrate you, or does it sort of align with your thoughts around minimalism?
Gosh, for me, I would say, yeah, it's a challenging situation with our capital markets and the stock market being driven off of consumerism, when my measure would be not gross domestic product, but I know like in some countries it's based on happiness. I think in Bhutan, I think it's based on gross domestic happiness or something along those lines. And for me, like one piece that I really took away from the book Die with Zero is is creating memory dividends, so experiences, and that can be, gosh, I mean, experiences like on travel. And for me, like travel and benefiting like local economies where I go, trying to feeling like my money is going to help someone else, and building those memory dividends by having interactions with people on our travels, on our bike trips. So spending money, where I get value and fulfillment is spending money for those experiences that are creating memory dividends for the rest of my life. After my husband and I got married, we took a year off just to go and travel over in Europe. We spent a winter skiing in the French Alps, and then after that, we did a 3-month self-supported bike tour. And oh man, we are constantly referring back to the experiences of that trip. I mean, little did we know like how much benefit that would give us, and we're so thankful for that, to be able to look back on those times before life really got crazy. That's, yeah, and I'm kind of probably going off topic, but yeah, GDP is not really of value to me. I know it helps the stock market and it helps my clients' portfolios, but from a living perspective, I really aim to, spend on fewer things and spend on experiences. And I feel like most of my clients have those same, are pretty aligned in that way. And so really, trying to help them identify those values, make sure those are front and center of our conversations. So when we're having conversations about spending and purchasing new things, making sure that these are in alignment with what their values are.
What about you, Julie? Do you love the GDP?
You know what? I love this topic. You and I, Laura, have talked about this before. I do, and I ponder this quite often. I do think that the intersection really challenges the traditional narrative about economic growth. And I would say, at first glance, minimalism, it takes the opposite approach, right? That's what most people would think, because it encourages us to spend less on things, and that's what drives the GDP. But I really do think most people that embrace the minimalist lifestyle, they're still spending their money, right? They're just spending it on, like Holly said, experiences, health, education, those sort of things, which are still driving GDP. But I guess here's what I ponder quite often is, how would, if the majority of people spent their money on experiences, health, and education, how would it affect the GDP? So this is just my thoughts. I think positively, it's not going to change it much, right? Because when you take experiences, health, education, those sort of things that we value more over, the overspending and consuming, you're still feeding travel, entertainment, dining out, fitness, mental health service, all those things, you're still feeding GDP, which, all those things are a major part of GDP, but negatively. So this is what I ponder most often. So negatively, how is it going to affect GDP? Well, I mean, I think obviously, retail, housing, debt spending. I don't know. So like short-term economic shifts. Yeah, I think we would definitely feel the short-term economic shifts from that, but what more like long-term sustainable economic structure? I don't know. It's just something that I would love to dive more deep into, So my thought is like the slower, more sustainable rate is that necessarily a bad thing? I mean, I don't think so. I think it's sustainable for more long term. And then, the rapid growth that our economy sees, I guess with like debt and overspending, I don't know, I just feel like, is that really sustainable for our long-term future? Because, as we know, looking at the markets and economy, those debt and overspending creates that, the boom and the bust cycle. So I don't know. It would be interesting to see, how the economy would be affected if more people just kind of held back and didn't quite spend so much on that consumer consumption products. I think, in my opinion, I think it would be a more sustainable future for things that we actually, are trying to build up, just the long term of the products that we purchase and sustainable living. I don't know. That's a little bit of my thoughts. It's just such an interesting topic, and I don't know that we will ever know the full answer to that, because I think this is what you and I have talked about, Laura, is just the majority of Americans are going to still have that, consumption consumer mentality. So I don't know that we'll ever truly get the full answer behind that, if that shift really took place.
Yeah, I think you're so right that we all as planners focus on the long term, right, outcomes, and that GDP isn't really focused on the long term outcomes. It's really focused on, our consumers spending more this month, this quarter, this year than they were in the prior year, which is a very short term sugar high for what we're trying to look for in the longer term horizon of a sustainable long term economy. And so, of course, the people who make decisions about, things like interest rates, right? The Fed, it looks at lots of other measures beyond this, but I feel like we're focused on the wrong thing every time we hear the consumer is spending more. Okay, great. Is that really what we want? Because the core of that is extraction, right? The consumer is extracting things, and their manufacturing processes, right? We're all buying the latest tech solution for every problem that we have. And it seems like, at least in my personal experience, that every time I buy a gadget to solve a problem that, like just weird examples, that gadget is broken. Like it breaks like so soon, and it doesn't solve my problem. And so I've spent money on extracting, precious metals and gosh knows what, and, created in a place far, far away where it had to be shipped across the globe. And then the thing doesn't even work. And so I feel like that consumption is just not a good, long, sustainable solution for, the problems in my life. But anyway, I love the idea of, from a mental health or happiness perspective, creation rather than consumption. If we spend increasingly more of our time creating than consuming, it would seem that our happiness would be higher. So I know that when I am creating a podcast episode, I'm a lot happier than when I am buying a gadget that's not going to work to fix a problem that I can't solve in my life. And so I wonder if, the folks that we know and the people that we work with focus more on, what am I creating in this world? What is the impact through of my life? If they focus more on that rather than, oh, what's the latest, solution for this problem? What's the latest thing that I can buy to deal with this little, issue that I have in my life? Like what the overall economic impacts of that would be. What amazing things we could create in this world if we focused on creation rather than consumption. Holly, what are your thoughts on creating over
Gosh,
consuming?
yeah, I don't know. I think as far as like creation, for me, what I've been focusing on lately is connection with people. And so I guess what I do as far as creation is create financial plans for people, help them to simplify their lives, to create awareness of their finances and, what they need to do to create a sustainable and stable financial future. And then as part of that, I've been part of an Ikigai kind of movement here in Seattle. And the Ikigai Summit was last Friday, and it was all about connection with people. And I feel like I don't know how this will impact. It doesn't really go with our economy as it is right now, but creating, more connections with people rather than, I don't know about like creation, but for me, that's what I'm trying to do right now is make more connections and focus on my time with people, which is what my value is being around people and so forth. So I don't know that I have a whole lot of input on like the creation side other than creating experiences and helping to, for me, creating more peace in people's lives just surrounding.
Well, your entire firm is a creation. It's a work of art that you created out of being able to have some shift your career based on the financial independence that you created for yourself, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the more
True.
that
Yeah.
you can enable other people to, switch gears and start creating something new and that, coast fi or that encore career or whatever, those
Absolutely.
people otherwise maybe would have stayed in fire lifestyle and would have retired, which is a
Mm-hmm.
consumption lifestyle, right? Retirees
Yeah.
are primarily consuming and not creating because they're no
Yeah.
longer working. You, for the folks that might watch this video, can you
Mm-hmm.
explain Ikigai, because not everybody knows what that is, and I think it's just a very powerful concept.
Yeah, so it's a Japanese term that loosely translated means your reason for being. So there's like I think 6 to 8 different aspects across your life, social, personal, work, and it's about finding, your purpose in life. Yeah, I don't know how else to explain it, but it's driven to give you, fulfillment not only based on your values but also your strengths. So I went through recently a Ikigai for CFPs program, and we, developed our values. So my 3 values are love, community, and movement. And then we also took a Clifton Strengths test to identify like what our strengths are. And mine is like connecting. I'm definitely an introvert, so it wasn't a surprise that my strengths are, connections with people. Um, and it really helped to, one, it reaffirms my purpose of what I'm doing as a financial planner, working with individuals and families. But it helps people to get more clear on what's going to bring them, the most fulfillment in their life. So at the summit last week, one of the speakers, he just recently started. It's called the U.S. Chamber of Connection here in Seattle. He saw just a real need. Seattle's known as, I forget what the term is. It's called the Seattle Freeze. Like people move to Seattle and they have a hard time meeting people, developing community. And so he really recognized this, and he's so focused on connecting people, helping people who move to Seattle to develop community and so forth. And so there was just several different speakers, but that's one example of someone who spoke about, he created this U.S. Chamber of Connection. So that's what Ikigai is, and they're starting a CFP, I think Ikigai CFP network that's going to be kicking off here soon. So if anyone is interested, it's ikigailab.co if anyone wants to learn more about the Ikigai Lab here in Seattle. Yeah.
So, Julie, what are your thoughts on the creation over consumption thoughts that we were talking about?
Yeah, so sure. Well, for me, it's actually been very interesting. It's almost kind of been like an experiment creation. I am really similar to Holly and just kind of embracing community and connection because authentic community and connection. And that's really kind of what I'm focusing on for 2024 and 2025 of just creating those authentic relationships. And for so long, I didn't have those. I knew a lot of people, but I too am an introvert and I really, really enjoy my alone time, almost that it could be unhealthy. So I have realized changing careers into this new career that it is important for community and connection. And I've just really had to shift my mindset around that and really embrace it. And it has made such a difference in my happiness in life that I never really thought that it would. And I think the consumption mentality and the consumer mentality really is a thief to our connection and creativity, and creation. I think it is really just a thief because we are so busy consuming, different things, shopping and, whatnot, that we just kind of put aside meaningful connections and relationships and being authentic. And then for me too, the other for creation is just meaningful projects. It just seems like you have to be intentional about setting aside the time to create something, whatever project that might be. And you have to replace that time with consuming the other things to be able to make space for the creation. How that all affects the economy, I don't really know. I feel like more people are doing less shopping and spending, so maybe it's a negative effect on the economy, but at some point we do, in my opinion, have to look at what brings us joy and happiness rather than what is driving the economy. I know that that's kind of a backwards way of thinking about it, especially as a financial planner and you're dealing with people's investments and wealth building, but there is a lot to be said about contentment and joy and happiness in our life.
I think those are all important points. And the reality is if we're all out creating something, then it might be something that has some sort of value to others, which kind of really actually goes to the notion of reshoring, right? Bringing back the creation. We've sort of outsourced all the creation of all the things overseas. And if we're all instead focused more on creating things, say building furniture, creating businesses, or whatever it might be, we're creating things within our economy that could be shared amongst other people within it rather than pulling everything from across an ocean, which is, kind of an interesting, idea for us to actually create the things that we need here inside of our own country. But in any case, creation feels a lot better in my experience than consumption does, though consumption sometimes allows us to connect with people in real authentic ways, right? I hear about Swifties going to concerts, right, and they just feel like they're among their tribe and they create amazing connections at those concerts. And so all of it is a balance, but for sure we only have so many hours in the day, so how we divide up those hours based on, searching for hours on the internet for the latest gadget that, will break within, 2 years versus, creating something really meaningful with another person or for another person, I think is something to consider. I found this, we all know about this idea of diminishing marginal utility. This is a economic concept that we all learn about in terms of we can have so much money, and then there comes a point at which more money does not create the same happiness incrementally as the earlier accumulation. So once we have enough money to pay for our living expenses, to take care of ourselves, to maintain our lifestyle, all of that has a lot of utility, usefulness for us. But then as soon as we get beyond that baseline of taking care of our needs, each additional dollar doesn't create the same amount of each of additional happiness. And so I think about that in terms of stuff too, right? Like there's a certain number of gadgets in my kitchen that I need that create a lot of utility for me. And then anything above that doesn't create the same amount of happiness or additional use or what have you. And so, what thoughts and perspectives do you all have on that law of diminishing marginal utility when everyone's out there just trying to fill up, with more stuff?
Yeah, I know. I kind of think of it as like it's definitely a behavioral thing. I know there's a term for this, and it's escaping me what it is, but like each when you get something new, your exposure to that initially brings lots of joy and lots of spark. And then over time, it loses its spark and shininess, and then you feel like you need something more. It's definitely a mindset shift of trying to figure out, like, I keep coming back to the concept of having the conversation with your 90-year-old self. Is your 90-year-old self, when you're sitting back on your porch, relaxing in your rocking chair, when you think back to that additional widget that you bought, back when you were 40, is that really enhancing your life? Is that creating the memory dividends down the line? Or what could you have done? What could you have spent your money on? What's an alternative of something that really would have brought fulfillment to your life as a whole, not just what you think is that next shiny object? And that could be saving it for an earlier retirement. It could be spending money on a trip for you and your family. I think it's definitely a mental shift for people to think about. Okay, I already have one car. Do I really need a second or even a third car? Is that really going to bring additional happiness, maybe some additional convenience, but is it really more fulfillment and happiness to your life? And what's an alternative way of spending that money that could bring more fulfillment? My favorite quote has always been "less is more," and which could be maybe a little bit controversial in the financial services area because people want to grow wealth. And I'm not opposed to growing wealth, but I am opposed to having more things. I'm all about simplification and creating more enjoyment in your life, which, yeah. So that's my take. I feel like it's a behavioral shift and people becoming aware that they're not really creating more happiness or fulfillment in their life by purchasing that next shiny object that their neighbor purchased. Oh, look at that! Our neighbor just got the newest Rivian, and I say that because I have this thing for pickup trucks. I've always wanted a pickup truck, so my neighbors have got these Rivians, and I have to catch myself and be like, okay, yes, that would be really fun, but maybe we just start with purchasing a used pickup truck because that's going to bring the fulfillment that my family wants, and we can just buy a less expensive little camper to put on the back of it. Don't have to buy that brand new Rivian. So we're all guilty of it. I am myself, and I have to constantly remind myself what is going to bring the most fulfillment for myself. And it's not having the brand new shiny car. It actually brings more stress because then I'm worried about when it's going to get its first dent, when it's going to get hit on the side of the road, and then I'll be upset. So anyhow, that's my take.
What about you, Julie?
Well, I just had to smile as Holly was talking because when she said less is more, I think that's what you said, Holly. My favorite saying is more is not always better. So, I think at some point the accumulation of stuff, and I know statistically they've done studies, it stops bringing joy to our life and it starts adding stress. And that has been definitely something that I've experienced. And Laura, when you were talking about the kitchen gadget, it's so funny. My family and I kind of have an ongoing joke because my parents love kitchen gadgets and they're like, Julie, you've got to get whatever the latest kitchen gadget is. And I was like, does it serve more than one purpose? And can it fit in my little drawer that I have my kitchen gadgets? If it can't, then I don't need it, because it just, it does create more work and stress. Like I've got to wash the extra gadget where it would just be simple to wash the knife and put it back in the drawer. So, I think you have to know when your enough is enough. And there is a lot of people that, don't know when their enough is enough. Just being a workaholic drives them to just keep doing the thing. And like Holly pointed out, it is behavioral. Why are we working so hard and so much to just be, consuming more and more? And, it is a mind mindset shift. And I too I love the simplicity of things. I love efficiency. That is why I love a tiny house, because it is so efficient, not spending time, wandering around the house looking for something. Everything has its place. And I know exactly where it is, and it's efficient to clean, and the maintenance is efficient. And I think I'm getting off topic here, but, it's just, it is, less is more. And more is not always better. It's such a great, motto to live by, because I think we do all of these things that we think that we're supposed to do. And it really is creating tremendous stress in our life, and it's making most Americans unhealthy. So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts about it. There is a point when you just stop getting joy out of all the stuff.
Yeah, and especially around the holidays, I just have been such a rebel when it comes to the holidays because I feel like that anything that any one of us wants, and this is a very privileged position. Not everybody's in this spot, right? But there was a time when I was young where I got something at the holidays because I actually needed it. And now it seems like the holidays are like a pressure around, coming up with something that somebody doesn't even know they need when all of us have at our fingertips momentarily and, Amazon Prime, whatever it is that, we possibly need at any moment. So how do you even find something that would be valuable to another person? It becomes really a lot of pressure to try to think about something that the person hasn't bought for themselves. It's really interesting. And, the more kitchen gadgets that I had, the more I felt pressure to use, right? That fondue pot, right? That I got rid of when we downsized into the tiny house. I felt like I got to get around to that fondue, right? Like, because I've got this pot. And if you've got a brand new car, it's all a bunch of electronics that you have to have, fixed. And like I said, it
Mhm.
seems like every time I buy something electronic, it's broken momentarily. So, gosh, like life can be really hard right now, and it gets more complex the more stuff we have. But, for all of us, keeping focus on what matters and keeping that really strong inclination that we've all been programmed with there's got to be let me just search, there's a solution for this, let me just buy something, right, to solve whatever problem it is that we have in our life, or whatever. I mean, I have dogs, and so I feel constant compulsion to buy another fix for whatever dog issue I have going on, right? And then you get a little bit past that emotional roller coaster and you realize that that wouldn't have, fixed the problem anyway. So, how do we slow down and help others slow down to focus on what really matters? We've talked about, the values worksheet. Any other ideas that you have about staying focused and helping people, or tips for folks to be intentional with their consumption?
I don't know. For me, I just been focused most recently on connecting with people and talking more. And I feel like over the next year, I want to make more of an effort to see people in real life and not just over Zoom. But I think having these conversations, in particular with clients, so doing a values exercise, or a statement of financial purpose, and making sure that we're just having these conversations. I mean, just having this conversation with the two of you right now is just helps me to stay true to what it makes me happy, and like staying off social media and, being drawn to that something else that's not really being drawn to purchase something that's not really true to me. So I think continuing to have these conversations, so that to help others, to stay true to themselves and to give people permission to not just follow what everyone else is doing and not just follow society. So I think, yeah, just, connection and community, and focusing on the, people in your life, the clients in your life, and getting down to what matters most.
Yeah, for me, I would kind of say very similar sentiment and all of that, we are very passionate about this lifestyle. So sometimes it might come a little bit easier for us, but we still fall victim to, the comparison and consumerism. So it is about, I think it's about connection. I think it's about having these conversations more. I think it's about making sure even us, we are connected and we are having these conversations more so we can be more encouraging and an example intentionality to our clients. We can say all the things, to our clients because maybe they don't have quite the passion that we do for it, but it really is important for us to kind of stay abreast and having the connections with others and talking about it more. And I too would say just the conversation that we're having today, it's gotten me to think outside of the box, things that I don't necessarily think about on a daily basis. And just knowing that, and it's very encouraging knowing that you've got a support group and you've got like-minded people that are, that have, similar values. And so that's just kind of what I'm working on for myself, as just surrounding myself and having more conversations. So I am, can always be encouraging to my clients and to others. I think the more that we talk about this, and the more that we shed light on it, and the more that, in the future it might become part of the norm for others. I think that's a long road, and maybe I'm being a little bit optimistic, but I would love for that day where, people are embracing just the simplicity and minimalist of life, because it does create less stress.
Yeah, I think that part of the key for me is knowing what other alternatives there are in life to bring me joy and trying to keep myself honed in on those, because we know that the dopamine hit that we get from the search
Mm-hmm.
function or the shopping function or whatever, like when I am feeling um, stressed or upset, right? I know that I can go scroll through Etsy or whatever and I can distract myself. So, what else is there in my world besides that consumer reward behavior that can bring me equal amounts of joy? And how do I keep reminding myself to focus on that thing that brings me
Right.
equal amounts of joy? Um, and just understanding the behavioral and biochemical parts of that, right? I know that search is very soothing for me. So what else is soothing for me? And let's replace that thing with that other thing. Because shopping, just like any of the other addictions that we know, can become an addictive process for many folks that allows them to soothe themselves from the pain of being a human being. And
Mm-hmm.
so what are the other things that we can soothe ourselves with? And let's create a list of those things and use those as our go-tos when we're really stressed or
Yeah.
upset or what have you. Taking a walk, going outside, connecting with nature, having a really deep and meaningful conversation with somebody who
Exactly.
really relate to. Like, all those things can be replacements too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for anyone who would like to track any of us down, let's just let people know where they can find more of our thoughts and perspectives. Holly, where can people find you?
So my website is altaviafp.com. I have started a blog. There's only one post up there so far, but the intent is to create more. I am on Instagram as well, AltaviaFP, but I don't have a huge presence. I have a bit of an aversion to social media, but I know it's a bit of a necessary evil with business. So Instagram, and then I'm also on LinkedIn. So
Awesome. And Julie, what about you?
Yeah, so you can find me at my website, and that is redesignwealth.com. My socials are Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and that is Redesign Wealth Planning. But like Holly, I had intentionally gotten off of all social media years ago, and so it is a necessary evil. But I will say, met a lot of people on those socials, so I don't have a huge following. I don't have, a big content on these topics, though I do want to change that. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
And I'm most active on LinkedIn at the Tiny House Advisor, ADVISER. Obviously, website too. We'll put all these links in the show notes, so anyone who wants to find us can find the links in the video. Well, Holly and Julie, thank you so much for having this conversation about minimalism and the economy. We're obviously not out there to take down the stock market, because we certainly are, working with clients to build wealth through that and maybe other ways. But certainly it's an important part of what we do. But on the other hand, there are some huge benefits for folks who can think more about their spending from an intentional perspective and maybe consider a minimalist approach. So I'm glad we got to have this conversation.
yeah, thanks
Yeah, it
for
was super
coordinating
fun.
this, Laura. It's been a
Yeah,
great
thanks,
conversation. I
Laura.
love this.